Ladies and gentlemen, we are live. It is Tuesday again, Tuesday, May the 21st, 2019. I am in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. Tony is in Atlanta, Georgia. And this is episode 23 of Two Dudes and Some Bullshit. And tonight, Tony and I are talking Scream Queens, not the television show Scream Queens in general. Oh, I think I crapped out a little bit. I don't know what happened there. Wait, hang on. No, I'm back. Sometimes that happens, folks, when you're doing a live feed. Tony, how the hell are you?
Hang on, man. I am wrapping up a phone call here with Freddie.
I'm your boyfriend now.
By the way, this came out really good. I love this thing.
That looks awesome. That looks awesome.
Detail by the artist, amazing.
Is it a guy that you know?
Yeah, it's a guy that I know. He made this from North Carolina, not too far from here, about just over the border. It's like North Georgia, go over the border, North Carolina.
All right. We may need to talk after the show.
Yeah, it's real good
because you may need to hook me up. All right,
absolutely, dude. Man, no, I'm doing really good. Quickly though, I just saw it today, man. I'm really impressed by our last stream, Rob Zombie's Halloween. 5,000 you motherfuckers watched us. That's some good shit. I was thinking about that today. I'm like, that's 2+ hours. And 5,000 people watched us for 2+ hours just shooting shit about Rob Zombie's Halloween.
Well, to be fair, you know how I'm a stickler for the details. I know what you mean, but to be fair, that's 5,000 views.
Yeah,
could be 3,000 people. Who knows?
Still,
that
was fucking like. I mean, you guys fucking seriously, all y'all out there supporting this show, man. You guys fucking keep rocking.
Absolutely, and you know what? When it comes and whenever we tend to do anything Halloween related, everybody's like, "Ah, yes, more Halloween." And that's just the way people are. So tonight, Tony and I are talking Scream Queens. Like I said, not the television show, but the title, Scream Queen. And what is a Scream Queen? Who are the Scream Queens? How many of them are there? Because, you know, in my opinion, anyway, you can't just arbitrarily throw out names just because a woman happens to be a woman and in a couple of scary movies. That, to me anyway, that doesn't necessarily mean that she would, you know, don the title of Scream Queen. Because if that is your criteria, if that is your benchmark, if that is your bar, then it doesn't make it special, right? It doesn't make it, you know, it's like, you know, sometimes I remember way back before I even had this, well, I've had this channel for years, but say about 3 or 4 years ago, I was on my regular Facebook page, not the one connected to this account, but my personal one. And I think I liked somebody's photo or something like that. And they were like, "Dave, my God, you liked my photo. Like I never see you like anything." And I said, "Well, yeah, but if I liked everything, then how would you know if I really liked it or if I was just acknowledging that you made a post? Like if I reserve my likes for things I actually really like, then when you see my like, you'll be like, whoa, Dave really likes that, as opposed to, you know, me just liking because you just happen to post, and you can always count on a like from me because I always see you post. You know, so that's kind of how I approach the Scream Queen thing. It's like, you know, I reserve that title for very specific sort of sets of criterias. I don't know, Tony, how do you feel about that?
Pretty parallel. Yeah, you know, you could argue and go, you know, the amount of body of work a person does, or, you know, but see, you know, I look at some people who have done the one and dones and have done really good fucking performances. You know what I mean? So it's like, do you not validate them in that category? So yes, this category gets into like major gray areas because I think everybody's point is valid. You know, I don't think there's like one definitive, like, okay, what me and Dave are going to say tonight is the definitive what it takes to be a Scream Queen. I think both of us are going to come at it from two different perspectives, which is going to make it interesting. And I'm sure you guys are going to throw some shit at us in the chat room tonight as well, too, on what your perspective of what a Scream Queen is. But that's what makes this topic so great and fun to tackle.
Exactly. And you know, hopefully at the end of the day, it's something I always approach my channel with, and something Tony and I approach the show with, is at the end of the day, you know, I want to be able, and we want to be able to give you something to think about. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I receive messages from people commenting on the videos that I post outside of the show. And from, you know, they'll say things like, you know, you've made me see such and such a different way, or you made me really think about this a different way, or I don't necessarily agree with you, but I got to hand it to you. You really made me think about something. And that's what it's really all about, because I think we can get so caught up in tunnel vision that, you know, it's important to be able to look at these things with a little more of an objective eye. And I think that although what is a scream queen really... First world problems, right? What is a scream queen essentially might be a little more subjective at the end of the day. There kind of is a certain sets of criteria that you could lay out that might help you definitively say, maybe not that person, right? It might help you kind of feel a bit differently about somebody maybe you thought was a scream queen, or somebody maybe you thought wasn't a scream queen. So that's what we're going to be talking about today on today's show.
Well, I think it's fun too, tackling this category, because in the horror genre, can't talk tonight, you know, we don't get many of these little fun things that we can do. You know, like when I listen to like my brother and his friends talk comic book movies, they're like, well, he's an Avenger, and well, I don't think he's an Avenger. Like, and I'm sitting here like, I don't know what the fuck you guys are talking about at all. But okay, knock yourselves. But so that's what I'm saying. Like, when it comes to this, we don't get many of these types of categories like comic books and Star Wars kind of get. So it's fun to tackle this stuff, and I love it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I brought up a list here of people that I would consider scream queens. I just went online and there's tons of lists, and I found one where I was kind of like, I don't know. Yeah. But here's my criteria. Here's the way that I look at it. It's very easy for us to be able to look at, like I said, a woman who is in a horror movie. Maybe she screams a lot. And maybe she's a known actress today, or like, you know, whatever the case is. And, you know, and the movie maybe is moderately successful, and all of a sudden she becomes a scream queen. I don't think that is right. I wouldn't consider her a scream queen. I think if an actress is in, say, one movie, let's start there, Tony. There's an actress in one movie and it's a horror movie. Does that make her a scream queen? I would say no, except if it is a horror movie that embeds itself into the pop culture consciousness as iconic, such as Janet Leigh in Psycho, such as Olivia Hussey in Black Christmas.
Yeah, that's Olivia Hussey, right? You know, you took mine, so yeah, absolutely.
Right. Now, Olivia Hussey is traditionally not a horror actress. I don't even think
no, wasn't she? I know she was Juliet, but wasn't she Christ's mother in like one of those like old biblical movies?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, she's done a lot of things.
Or was she Mary Magdalene, or however you pronounce that?
I can't remember, but it was something. Yeah,
Mary Price or Mary Magdalene, but she played. I know she played one of the part. Chat room, guys, back me up. Which one was it?
Yeah, they'll tell us. But it's that kind of thing where it's like, but there's an asterisk beside that, because again, you have to remember that there's different levels. Like, there's a spectrum. I think it's important to understand that there is a spectrum here that really sort of, you know, because I am somebody that I don't want to give the title Scream Queen so arbitrarily, because I think it's a special title, right? So Janet Leigh in Psycho, yes. Olivia Hussey in Black Christmas, yes. But it's not necessarily because of their performances. It's a performance in combination with the film being really good and entering that pop culture zeitgeist. I mean, it's the kind of thing where everything if you're going to be in one movie and you want to be thought of as a scream queen, then that movie has to be firing on all cylinders. And that is lightning in a bottle in a lot of cases. So
Well, another one we, haven't mentioned more current would be Neve Campbell. I mean, did she do anything beyond Scream in the Scream franchise? I mean, I know she's done other stuff, but I mean, as far as horror themed related, is that what she, and would we define Neve Campbell as a Scream queen or a Scream heroine? Because I mean, yeah, I know she screamed, but
I think
more the heroine of the story.
Well, I think Scream Queen, in my mind anyway, Scream Queen sort of, encompasses the heroine aspect as well. I don't necessarily think it's somebody who is now obviously you can
separate the two.
Some people do, absolutely, and then you bring in, well, what about Final Girl versus Scream Queen and all that? But that's a whole other thing. Right now, we are talking about women in horror movies that are here's the problem with Janet Leigh. It's almost an honorary Scream Queen.
Right.
Because here's the problem with Janet Leigh. Although she is known for Psycho, and she's arguably in one of the most famous scenes in horror
scene in cinema history.
She wasn't in the movie for very long.
No.
She was to Psycho what Drew Barrymore essentially was to Scream.
Mm-hmm.
And she was so famous before Psycho, and she was an iconic golden age actress. I mean, watch.
Oh yeah, she comes from that old Hollywood.
Oh, unbelievable! I mean, if anybody has ever seen Touch of Evil, and I mean, she's had a long storied career. It's not like Psycho was her claim to fame,
right?
But Psycho was one of the first of its kind. So is she a Scream Queen? Like, yes, she is. But there's that asterisk. It's almost like just a special sort of kind of circumstance,
right?
In my opinion. And that's not to devalue Psycho or what she did in that movie or the iconicness of that scene or how it entered, the pop culture. Not at all. It's just that when you compare somebody like Janet Leigh to, say, a Neve Campbell, who was in 4 movies that we know of.
Yeah.
There we go. My pop filter came down. The first film entered the pop culture.
Mm-hmm.
And one could argue, because of how much it was embedded into the pop culture outside of the 90s television show Party of Five, which has since pretty much gone by the wayside. Really, it's not.
You brought it up, I forgot about it.
Yeah, that Neve Campbell, when people think of Neve Campbell, certainly in the horror community, think of Neve Campbell, they think of Scream. They don't necessarily think of her other, but now that doesn't mean she hasn't done other stuff. She has done other stuff. She had a great run on season, I think it was 5 of House of Cards. She's done, a couple other films, independent films. There was that one where she got naked in. I forget what one that was. I mean, she's done other shit. She's done other, thrillers and dramas and sure, but you could make the argument and say that she's known.
Oh, she will be forever known, Sidney Prescott, forever.
Right. That's why, right, when she goes to the conventions, what do you think is on her table?
Oh, all Sidney Prescott. And the crazy thing about that, as we're saying this, you say Courtney Cox, most people will first say Monica from Friends. They will not say Gail Weathers from Scream.
I will not.
Courtney Cox, or some might say Bruce Springsteen's Dancing in the Dark, because that was her first, breakout. But as far as herself, they immediately will go to Monica from Friends before anything in Scream.
Right. And this is getting to my overall point, where you can whittle it away down to the fundamental foundation for what they are best known for, what made them, what pushed them into the pop culture consciousness. And Courtney Cox was a bona fide star.
Oh yeah.
A year before Scream. Yep. And because Friends continued to be huge while Scream was going, she was known for Scream, but she was much further for Friends. And and I think people will always, because of her role, because she was not the the main final girl per se, even though she survived all the movies.
Yeah. That's a good argument too. Who is the final girl in Scream? Is it Nev or is it Courtney? Because they're both still alive.
Yeah, I think it's Nev Campbell. But,
for sure.
But yeah, so it's interesting. You know, it's a very interesting thing, and that's what Tony and I wanted to sort of, you know, talk about and give you guys into you know, to think about that, because I just think it's so important that we don't arbitrarily throw that around. I mean, I saw somebody today posted something about I always forget her name now, Conjuring chick. Amira Farid, what's her name?
Vera Farmiga, whatever.
Vera, yeah, whatever. You know,
yeah.
She's a scream queen. I'm like, no,
she's playing.
No, she's not as. Yeah, it's not as. No, I mean, maybe one day.
Yeah,
but right now it's because she's done.
I don't know. Here's the thing: she's done Bates Motel and she's done The Conjuring. You know, so I could understand the argument.
There's an argument to be made, but I'm just not feeling it yet for me. I think for me, I think there's certain things that you don't want to give. It's like for those of you that don't know, the Hollywood stars on the Hollywood Walk of Fame.
You sound like you're about to go open up like story time and read a book.
Well, for those of you that don't know, in the Hollywood stars of the Walk of Fame, there's this illusion that Hollywood gives these stars to these actors, and that's not the case at all. You are asked, if I was not, you know, just hypothetically, no one's asking me if I want a star. I'm certainly not that big. But hypothetically, to use myself as an example, if somebody was like, you know, they would come to me and they'd say, Dave, we want to give you a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. Do you want it? Now I can turn it down. It's not, I can turn it down because I'm the one that has to pay about $40,000 to actually have it installed and pay for the ceremony and all that kind of shit, I think. And then I have to pay for the upkeep, which is something like, I don't know how many thousands of dollars, you know, a year. So, you know, a long time ago, those stars, like, it meant something. Now it's like Britney Spears had her star before Spielberg. You know, so it's like they're losing their sort of cachet a bit. And I just want people to kind of not jump too quickly to give the title to a scream queen. Like, I can see the Conjuring chick. Yeah. Okay. She's on the path.
Yep.
She's on the path, but let's hold it for a second here, you know, because I don't want to diminish what mystique that title might have. Anyway, I haven't talked.
She's done two solid franchises. Bates Motel, I somewhat enjoyed, you know. And The Conjuring, obviously 1 and 2, and Annabelle 3 coming here soon, and Conjuring 3 coming soon.
And of course, you got Godzilla as well, but I wouldn't consider that the same sort of. That's more science fiction.
Godzilla, I forgot about that.
Yeah. But see, I don't consider that a horror movie, right? Like, when it's a monster movie. I mean, you could talk about it.
She's on path. I think one more, like, outside of like nothing Conjuring related. If she does something else and it turns out to be pretty decent, then that she's in. You know.
Yeah, exactly. Now, who else is on your list?
Honestly, I know Janet Leigh gets a lot of cred, and I understand why she gets the cred as the first scream queen. But I gotta tell you, when I think of our genre, look, Psycho is in like you said, it's in its league of its own. I have it. I have the VHS.
Same here.
Love it. I always watch it every October, even though I currently watched it here recently because I'm putting some ideas for a Norman Bates photo shoot together. And I get what people are saying, but when it comes to our genre, like Halloween, Friday, Nightmare on Elm Street, you know, I think of Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Black Christmas. Those two came out neck and neck. Texas came out 2 months beforehand, and I think of the first scream queen of what I define it as is Marilyn Burns. And what she went through in Texas Chainsaw Massacre, I watched that here the other day because you had talked about how you watched it. So I was like, I'm going to watch it again. And yeah, there were certain scenes that like dragged out a little bit too long.
Yes.
But that dinner scene, man, that up until she's on the truck, what she puts herself, the physicality to scream like that is not fucking easy to do.
No, it's not. You see, but people have to, I agree with everything you've just said. And there's that distinction between scream queen, somebody who screams, or somebody who's just in multitude of horror movies. And I look at it as somebody who is in multitude of horror movies, because by default, if you are in a multitude of horror movies and you're a woman who's playing the protagonist, who's being chased by whatever it is, you're probably going to be screaming at some point. So I don't use whether or not you scream as the defining factor of whether you're a scream queen. I use the fact that whether or not you're in a multitude of movies. But like I said at the beginning, Tony just made a really good point. You know, she was, I mean, she's been in other stuff, but the first Texas Chainsaw is her real sort of claim to fame. Absolutely. And at that time, that was pretty new. I mean, it's a little cheesy now, but there's a couple of moments in that movie that is absolutely terrifying. The verisimilitude in that is phenomenal. Yep. And it's terrifying. And I watched it again for the first time in years, I guess a week or so ago. Yeah.
I watched it this week. You had talked about it. I was like, yeah, man.
Right. Yeah. So I was like, yeah, I mean, and that movie entered that pop culture primarily because it was marketed as this is real. Right. Womp, womp. But yeah, I was totally down for that. Down to have her sort of enter that area because of, not just because of her performance, but because of how the movie entered that pop culture. I don't think if a movie enters pop culture, I don't know. It's interesting to me.
Well, because now, like, I think, and even the chat room, I can see they're everyone's on board with Marilyn Burns as a scream queen. But now you flip it to Margot Kidder, and is she a scream queen or isn't she? Even though, okay, arguably we can say Black Christmas, Sisters Tech Black Christmas, which is a horror movie, and then of course Amityville, and she obviously is in Rob Zombie's Halloween 2, and I know she's done some other horror stuff, even though Lois Lane is her big, pretty much main, role that she will be forever known for. She's obviously, the fanboys out there who love Superman, she's still the favorite Lois. When you ask them, it always goes to her. So is she a scream queen or isn't she? Because some people don't view her as a scream queen, even though her body of work says she's kind of qualified.
Yeah, again, I mean, it comes down to what are the defining factors for you? Is it if it's just, a woman who's in a horror movie that happens to be well known, that makes her a scream queen? Well, then there's a lot of women who can hold the title. But then the title, the more saturated, the market is, the less special it becomes. And so is Margot Kidder a scream queen? I'm going to say no. My gut feeling right now, or maybe she is, but it's an honorary scream queen. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's kind of like, maybe it's something that is kind of there, but it's like an honorary degree. Maybe to a degree, because I think that you like, if you just say, like, can you compare Margot Kidder to Heather Langenkamp? Can you compare Margot Kidder to Jamie Lee Curtis? Right. Can you compare Margot Kidder to Neve Campbell? Because if the title is the exact same, then what is the differentiation between the two? Yep. Then you have to start looking at the variables that distinguish them, which is why I think it's important that you have certain criteria. So maybe it's she's an honorary, scream queen, or something to that effect. Like, maybe there's something that we could say, which is really cool. That's really cool. Yep. But then it makes, when you receive the real title of a scream queen, maybe it makes it a bit more special. I don't know. How do you feel about that? Do you think that's...
I agree, because even some people in the chat said, they never thought of her as a scream queen. Even other people that I've had this conversation with. But then when you step back and go, wait, yeah, she was in Black Christmas. Yeah, she was in Sisters. Yeah, she's in Amityville. Yep, she's in Rob Zombie's Halloween. It's like, hold on. Her body of work starts to add up. You're like, wait, she's done a lot of fucking horror films. But you say the name Margot Kidder, and everybody's going to say Lois Lane.
Of course.
Not going to think of her as a scream queen.
Of course. And like I said, it's not just about the scream. There's other things that define a scream queen, right? A scream can be one of them, but if that's your basis, she screamed a lot in that movie, well, then there are hundreds of thousands of scream queens. Yep. Because there are hundreds of thousands of horror movies with women screaming all the time that you don't even know about. Yep. So that's why it has to kind of come down to, well, wait a second here. Let's look at certain criteria. you know, and so it's not just a good scream. It's not just a horror movie. I think it's a combination of a few things. And let me see here. I had my list up here.
Now, what about Sigourney Weaver? How would you categorize her? You know, we got Alien.
No.
Interesting. No. Oh, no. I thought he would have gone straight to the yes.
No, I don't think so. Because I think, but see, now it comes down to, Scream Queen. Is she a Scream Queen?
I count Ghostbusters as a comedy horror film, even though it's not technically a horror film. I put it in comedy horror because it is part of the paranormal world, and she's in it obviously, and she's obviously in Aliens and the Alien and the other.
I think I like to be fair. I will give you that one. I will put okay. To be fair, I'll come around and say okay. I would put Sigourney Weaver above Margot Kidder.
There you go.
Like, I mean, like, you know, let's think about that, right? And then some people might go, oh, well, obviously, well, but then we got, well, why? And then that's when you look at the variables, right? So it's really important. Like, there's not as, in my opinion, there's not as many Scream Queens in the world, you know, what would be as people think there is.
Right.
You know, and
it's like somebody saying, oh my God, I almost said Nev Campbell again, but not Nev Campbell, but, Winona Ryder. Someone might consider her a Scream Queen, but why? I mean, you're basing it on what? Beetlejuice. She was in Aliens. She might have done something else kind of horror theme related, but I wouldn't put her in that category. She's a great actress. I love her in Beetlejuice and some of the other stuff that she does, but I wouldn't put Winona Ryder in the Scream category.
No, I wouldn't either. No, not even close.
But Christina Ricci, I might consider that. You know, she was Wednesday Addams. She's also in Sleepy Hollow. And I know she's done some other films, but obviously Wednesday Addams is, you know, the first thing that comes to a lot of people's mind when you say her name. And obviously, you know, the Addams family is, you know, synonymous and iconic in the horror community, especially, you know, for the television series and the movies. But would you consider Christina Ricci, you know, in that?
I would not have even thought to put her on the list.
Really?
Yeah. She wouldn't have crossed my mind. I just don't feel that Christina Ricci would make that list. But I don't know. It's that's a tough one. I don't feel it right now. I mean, my mind can be changed. But I'm not.
Which is funny because I bet you if I said Sarah Michelle Gellar, you might give her that. Because if I Know What You Did Last Summer, Scream 2, and I know she did some other shit. The Grudge, or is it The Grudge? Yeah, right? Grudge.
Yeah, but again, it comes back into like the Addams Family is not a horror movie. You know, I mean, it's horror-esque. It's you know, but it's not a you know, I don't like. I consider that up there with like
horror. You know, it's
it's cute. It's a kids movie. You know, it's like Casper. You know, or you know, I just don't know if Christina Ricci would fit the bill for me. Now, looking at Sarah Michelle Gellar, I mean, she was in The First I Know What You Did Last Summer. She was in Scream 2. She was in The Grudge. She was in the. No, she was. Oh, she was. No, because she was in
one of those Japanese films. I'm telling you, somebody in the chat back me up.
Yes, The Grudge.
The Grudge. Okay, that's what I
thought. Yeah. So I mean that's. Yeah, you could. Yes, I would put her above Christina Ricci. I would put Jennifer Love Hewitt above Christina Ricci, because Jennifer Love Hewitt has primarily made her the existence has been in the realm of horror supernatural. I mean, she did the 2 I Know What You Did Last Summer films, and she did a few little farce comedies, but then of course she had Ghost Whisperer. Right. Which ran for 5 years, right? So I mean, which isn't a horror, you know, show per se,
it's part of that world.
It's part of the world. So I think that, you know, you could consider them again. For me, I think it's important to the one defining distinction. I think for me, and you know, we can't have, in my opinion, you can't have your cake and eat it too. Would be whether or not this person is most identified with those roles. I think that's what it comes down to. I think Jamie Lee Curtis was called a scream queen back in the day because she did Halloween. She did Halloween 2. She did The Fog. She did Terror Train. She was making her living being in low budget horror movies, you know, and then she eventually branched out. I mean, John Carpenter gave her the role in The Fog because he was stunned that she wasn't being casted, you know? So,
now, obviously, I mean, I think this would be a no-brainer. I always fuck up her first name, Linnea Quigley. I mean, this
no-brainer.
Even to this day, God bless her, man. She has embraced it, and she is not like she is balls. The defined definition of balls to the wall and don't let off the pedal. That woman right there, and I follow her on Instagram, and I think it's great. I think it's great that she continues this even at her age. I love it.
100%. Oh yeah, no, that is the she's. Oh, I mean, now most of her movies have been in nobody's heard of them B horror movies. You know, straight to DVD. What the fuck is that? I've never seen it before. Holy shit, that was shit. Oh, that was so bad it was good. Hey, that was actually really good. I mean, that's been primarily her career, but she is identified in the horror. That's who she is.
Yep.
Linda Blair.
Linda Blair. Yeah. I mean, forever. You know? She'll be always Reagan, forever.
Right. And it's not just always Reagan. It's one of the most iconic horror movies in motion picture history.
Yeah.
You know, so I mean, it's and even though she was in the sequel, which wasn't that great, she still played that character twice, or 2 or 3 times, twice, I think, at the very least.
She did twice.
So that's another one there. You know, who else on my list here? Let me see.
Any particular favorites like that you can think of that you know, the big guns?
Well, I think I've often, as much as I'm a big Halloween fan, there's something about, and there's, as much as I am a fan of Laurie Strode, there is something about Heather Langenkamp's Nancy that is just the quintessential scream queen / final girl / heroine. Like it just, there's something about her that is almost, when you see her in the first one, when you see her in the third one, when you see her again in New Nightmare, it's almost like, you know, she's not that Laurie was not smart, but Laurie was she was shy.
Yep.
And there was something a little more attractive about, it depends on who you are, about Nancy's personality. She was strong. She was independent, but she was vulnerable. But she was vulnerable.
But I also think she wasn't lie when it came to like her and her boyfriend, even though like that's how she's kind of portrayed. I think it was just circumstances that shit was going down. I think behind closed doors, she was a freak in the freaking sheets. Okay. Like I'm like willing to bet that shit. Okay. Like I will put bottom line on it. So yeah, you're right. Because Laurie, I don't picture Laurie, the character now. I think Jamie Lee Curtis can fucking throw down in the bedroom for sure. But Laurie Strode, the character, no. I think if I were to say, if I were a 17-year-old boy and I had to pick between the two, I'd probably date Nancy before I would date Laurie.
Yes. Oh yes. Just based on personality alone.
Yep.
Yeah, 100%. So there might be some biases there, right? As a male, and you know, you look at the, you know, the sort of, you know, the biology, you know, kicks in, you know, and you look at this person, you think, oh, they're very attractive and attractive personality. And I like that, you know, dynamic and that, you know. So, but when you think of everything that the character is also involved with, and you know, how she handles, she's vulnerable, she's scared, you know, she is almost the quintessential sort of poster child, you know, for, you know, poster, I should say, for a scream queen in a lot of respects. That's not to take anything away from Laurie Strode. I mean, she's right up there too. She's up there too. I mean, it could be like this, you know what I mean?
Literally. I mean, literally.
Yeah, exactly. But I think Heather Langenkamp is, whenever I think of scream queens, funny enough, I mean, I always think of Jamie, but right there is Heather, and I think her role, and especially that first Elm Street, is can't be overstated or even understated, really, at the end of the day.
Yeah. I'm gonna shock people, and I'm gonna get to this in a minute. I mean, y'all know I love Danielle Harris in Halloween 4. I do. but I don't consider Harris a scream queen. Scream princess, absolutely. And the reason for that is I know she was in Hatchet, and I understand she was in Urban Legend, but Danielle Harris's claim to fame will always be Jamie Lloyd from Halloween 4. No one's going to remember her except in the diehard horror community. They will remember her as, you know, her brief, you know, thing there that she did in Hatchet. I know she did something Think and See No Evil as well too, right? If I'm not mistaken with
yeah, and of course Rob Zombie's films.
Rob Zombie's films. You know, I kind of almost look at her as a scream princess, not a scream queen, because I think for all of us, we'll always see her as that little girl wearing that fucking clown costume, getting chased down by the boogeyman. And that's not a knock at Harris. I love her. And I don't think there's anything wrong with giving her that. And in fact, she would be the only one in this female category that you could literally say she's the definitive scream princess, you know, and that's it. And I don't think it diminishes, you know, the title or whatever. I just think because it's such a unique thing that character, to me anyways, as far as from a female perspective, I mean, I like Drew Barrymore in Firestarter, and I know there's a couple others out there, the little girl from Poltergeist, but Harris's role as Jamie Lloyd is, to me, the best performance as a kid, especially in Halloween 4, and how far she reaches as an actress. You know, when you talk about that scene there when she's being chased by the kids and laughed at, and she's like almost literally having a panic attack up against a tree. She's 9 years fucking old doing that. I mean, that's some fucking chops. So that's why I kind of put her in her own title of Scream Princess. But mine is Amy Steele. I mean, Amy Steele, to you, like how you described Nancy, Heather Langenkamp, it's literally verbatim without basically repeating what Dave said. That's how I feel about Amy Steele from Friday the 13th Part 2. I put her, you know, like Nancy's here, Laurie's here, Amy's just like barely, like, I mean, centimeters above, you know, and Amy Steele looks like she can throw down too.
Yes, Amy Steele. She is actually between her and Adrienne King. I actually think I like Amy Steele's character a bit more. And in Friday the 13th Part 2, and I actually, there's times when I watch, not that the girl in Friday the 13th Part 3 is not cute, right. You know, and not easy on the eyes. But when we're talking, and not that Amy isn't either, but when we're talking about characters that are kind of to get attached to and you can root for, I find that when I watch Friday the 13th and then I watch Friday the 13th Part 2 and Adrienne King is back, it's nice because there's that connection to the first movie.
Yep.
But when she's killed, I don't know if sadness is the right word, but I kind of just feel like, oh, so that was the last kind of remaining connection she's got. But when you know, Amy Steele comes on the screen and you're introduced to her, very likable. And you're
with her immediately.
Yes. And it makes me wish that she would have gone on.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's the same sort of thing I felt that, well, when they did after A Nightmare on Elm Street 3, and then of course you go into Part 4, and we're asked now to like these new characters, you know, and it feels kind of.
Patricia Arquette doesn't even come back, you know.
Right. So it was a little, but you know, I mean, you know, you watch Part 3 and you're like, oh, well.
Do you think it was a little premature to kill off Nancy's character in Part 3? You know, I always wondered, had they known if Patricia wasn't going to come back to do it, had they thought like, geez, maybe we shouldn't have killed her off?
Well, there's two things, right? There's the story and whether or not that was the right thing to do. And then it's whether or not Heather even would have come back.
True.
So I don't even know. I don't know what the contractual obligation was at the time, whether she signed on for one picture, whether behind closed doors off the record she was like, I'll do this, but I don't want to do another one because I don't want to be typecast. I don't know. For the story, yeah, I think she should have survived. Yeah, for sure, because I think she's somebody that she's so likable and vulnerable, and as soon as she walks into that room, you know, never sleep again, I think is the thing she says, right? You know, when she's at the doorway there, in Part 3, immediately you're like, oh yeah,
there's our friend.
Yeah, because there's that connection. It's the same thing you feel when, you know, and this isn't mutually exclusive to just horror movies. It's like this with TV shows. It's, you know, whatever the case is, right?
I really wish. Did you? Was it Crystal? I think it was Crystal Lake Memories. Not his name was Jason, because I have both documentaries, and I know they're pretty much similar, same cuts, because it's Tom Savini did his, and then they did the whole Crystal Lake Memories thing, where Corey Feldman was hosting it, and didn't they say, or didn't Amy Steele say? Someone correct me if I'm wrong, that they had an idea for her to do part 3, totally different story from my understanding. But I think she said no and ended up regretting it, and she wishes she had done it. Is that? I'm paraphrasing it, right?
I heard something about that. Yes, and I think you might be right. I'm not 100% sure, but somebody in the chat room might be able to say whether or not that was legitimate, because I think there's some truth to that. I think she does regret not doing
because
part 3.
I'm going to tell you, I really think, not that I mind 3 and 4, but honestly, my favorites in the franchise are 1, 2, and 6. And I honestly think had she stuck with it and came back, I think Friday the 13th would have had a totally different tone. And I also think we might not have gotten Corey Feldman. I think they might have done this like, Amy Steele would have became the Nancy or Heather Langenkamp and Jamie Lee Curtis to Halloween and Nightmare. Amy Steele would have been that to Friday. And it would have been really interesting to see what we could have gotten,
Yeah, and when you think of the story of Friday the 13th part 3, you absolutely could not that the girl's not, all right, but you could certainly swap her out with Amy Steele.
Yep.
And I mean, you'd have to restructure the narrative a little bit, obviously, because she's already aware that there's somebody that exists named Jason Voorhees and blah blah blah. But certainly there's nothing that's, there's nothing about the Friday the 13th part 3 movie that is just, that you couldn't do a little bit of a rewrite and make Amy the star.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, I agree. She's a scream queen as well. And
I think everyone would agree, probably most of our favorite Friday girl.
Yeah, I like Adrienne King too.
I do. I know that sounds mean to say. I agree.
Yeah, I do too. She has a, but again, it's such an iconic first movie,
Exactly.
and the way, of course, she spoiler alert if nobody's seen it, but hell, the movie's fucking nearly 40 years old, so get over it. The way she chops off Pamela Voorhees' head at the end is iconic, and then she's in the canoe, and then of course think about Friday the 13th, the end of Friday the 13th part 3, when that other girl is in the boat or the canoe and Jason's mom comes out of the water and grabs her. It was a cheap carnival trick knockoff of the iconic end of Friday the 13th part 1. You cannot capture, like, it was cool. I mean, it's still cool to see. Whoa, that's kind of cool.
But yeah, I hear
you know what I'm saying. I'm talking about the effect is cool.
Yeah.
But it doesn't, it's not, you don't get the same impact. So yeah, no, I certainly she is as well. And yeah, it's funny. But that's what it comes down to, folks. It comes down to, like, one of those things where it's not just a matter of women being in a horror movie and screaming. I think there's certain criteria.
I got a real good one for you, and I'll tell you why.
Before you do, can I just say that Danielle Harris?
I know some people disagree with me, but
it's funny because
a harsh disagreement. I think it's just like
our
perspectives. It's not like, you're wrong, or like what they're saying is wrong. I think it's just our perspectives of how we view her. You know what I mean?
Right. And I think it's important. I think one could make the argument and say that she started as a scream princess. This is good. This sounds so convoluted, and like I'm grasping at straws here. But because she has been in more horror movies as an adult now, whether there be rental movies, straight to DVD, whatever the case is, okay, because a lot of them have been. Danielle Harris never really had a career outside of that. So, but because she's been in more of that now than she ever was as a child, it's almost like you could make the argument that she's graduated to Scream Queen.
Yep.
Or you put that little asterisk there as well, you know, like an honorary Scream Queen, like how we were talking at the top of the show, how, you know, because you can't just call everybody a Scream Queen, you know, just because they happen to be in a horror movie that does well, because then that means there's hundreds of thousands of Scream Queens and it just diminishes the value of what that is. So exactly. I see what I can see both sides of that, but I certainly see what you're saying with that. Sorry,
exactly.
You were going to say.
No. And I see what you're saying in the chat room as well, too. I know they didn't really necessarily agree with on par with it. But again, I don't think it's like we're like disagreeing, you know what I mean? Like to be spiteful disagreement. It's like, okay, I see what you're saying. I see what they're saying. And I think we're all kind of like on that same page. I think a lot of people see her as that like Scream princess, Jamie from Halloween. But you're right. She has that body of work that she has done as an adult. So the little asterisk there, I totally agree with that.
Cool. All right.
Yeah. Yeah, this is gonna be a good one.
All right.
And the reason why, because I've literally seen a lot of young adults, we'll say in their early 20s to mid 20s, dress up as this character. Would you put, because of her body of work that she's done, even though she's really known for as Baby in the Devil's House of a Thousand Corpse, Sherry Moon Zombie as a Scream Queen? This is a tough one. Because, I mean, that literally is her body of work. Everything that he's done, he's casted her in it pretty much. And I've seen a lot of women dress up as Baby for Halloween parties at clubs and stuff when I've been out to these parties and they've dressed up as her, you know, for Halloween. So it's a tough one, you know?
I mean, you know, over Margot Kidder, yes.
And like how much?
You know
what I mean?
Well, yeah, but I mean, yeah, I mean, you know, you have to give credit where credit is due, and you know, I mean, I'm not, yeah, I mean, she has been in well, yeah, all of his movies,
all of them,
and now has she been in horror movies outside of Rob Zombie films?
I don't think so. I think she only does stuff with him.
She only does stuff with him.
I'd have to double check her IMDb, but if she has, I mean, maybe she's done stuff with other people, like helping out, whatever. But I think primarily she does the stuff that he makes, you know,
right? Which
is a given. You know, if Zombie's making a movie, you know, it's a given that she's going to be in it. But my argument would be, even though, okay, yes, she's done, you know, Halloween 1 and 2, she's done all his other stuff, she really is predominantly known for as Baby. I don't see people cosplaying as her character from Halloween 1 or 2 or anything else. But I do see women getting all white trashed up and ripping up them jeans and showing them butt cheeks, you know, at these Halloween parties. And you see the curly blonde hair, you know, who, you know, if you're a horror fan, you know what this person is imitating, and it's Baby from House of a Thousand Corpses and Devil's Reject.
Tony,
and it's kind of become an iconic character. People, you know that. And I will give credit where credit is due. You know, look, I love, you all know I love Rob Zombie's music, but I'm not the biggest Rob Zombie movie fan. But her performance in Devil's Rejects and House of a Thousand Corpses was really good. I will say that. The rest, I don't know.
And people in the chat are also saying the Toolbox Murders. I remember that now. I saw the Toolbox Murders years ago, and you guys are right. She was in that. I will say, you know what? Like again, and again, don't start sending in super chats yet. We always wait until the Q&A part. But I just want to say, Grave Warmer says, no, not Sherry Moon, because of the fact that her claim to fame is Rob Zombie movies. You see, that's the point I'm talking about. Is that's arbitrarily, you know, picking and choosing what, but because then I could just say, no, not Nev Campbell, because her claim to fame are just fucking Scream movies. You know what I'm saying? Like I could just easily say that, because now it becomes, yeah, but Rob Zombie, you know what I'm saying? So it has to be without, you know, the subjective sort of appeal. Like you either are or you aren't. You know, you can't just kind of say, well, yes, but no, but yes, but, because then it becomes so convoluted that then anybody can be a Scream Queen and anybody cannot be one. So when I think of Sherry, and when I think of Sherry Moon Zombie, although I'm not a big Rob Zombie fan, you look at the criteria and you go, well, yeah, okay, yeah, she fits it. Now, is she always playing some, at the very least, some level of starring role or supporting role in his movies? Do we know?
Well, let's see here.
I mean,
Devil's Rejects and House. She's starring. She's one of the main villains. And
that's right.
Obviously, I'm going to assume 3 from Hell. She's going to be one of the main villains in that as well, too.
I haven't seen 31. Is she in that?
Good question. Like, dude, honestly, I don't want. It's funny. Like people, you follow me on Instagram. I'm always using Rob Zombie's music as part of my stories. I love his music, but I don't watch his movies. I'm not a fan of his shit. Yeah. I couldn't tell you if she's in 31. I do know the main 4 currently. And she might have whatever else he's done. Okay, so people are saying, yeah, she is in 31. So there you go.
Okay, cool. All right, well, there you go.
Yeah, I forgot about that. I have seen Lord of Salem.
So I mean, I think it's fair to say that you see now it gets tricky because you could define her as a scream queen, but then is it the same kind of scream queen,
right,
as Heather Langenkamp or Amy Steele? Or because is she the main protagonist? Is she the damsel in distress? Right? Is she the vulnerable girl that? No, not really.
Well, here's how my mind works. Who would I want to spend the rest of my life banging in the bedroom? Heather Langenkamp and Amy Steele for sure. Sherry Moon, I'd want to spend like maybe a good solid month with and have the most fun ever. Nasty, raunchy, but I couldn't see myself for the rest of my life with her. Heather and Amy Steele for sure.
Right. But see, that's my point, right? Because then you can water it down and say, okay, well, scream queen, is it just somebody who's in a lot of horror movies starring, who's a woman? Is that a scream queen? Or is it also a scream queen if you are the heroine, the final girl, the main protagonist? Can you be a villain in a scream queen? Do you have to be a protagonist to be a scream queen? There's so many. That's why I think these conversations are fun, and hopefully it gets people in the chat room thinking, because I think we need to think about these things before we say that person's a scream queen, because then anybody can be a scream queen, and yeah, that's a good one. Sherry Moon Zombie. I want to say yes, but then I backed myself up and I thought, but is it a different, maybe there needs to be categories of scream queens, right? There's got to be like levels, badges, like black belt, blue belt, white belt, red belt, right? You know what I'm saying? Like maybe there's got to be levels of scream queens.
Yeah. Well, there's another one that I got to tell you, man, because this girl's fucking fine as hell. Erica Learson. I don't know if I said her last name right, but she is in Blair Witch Book of Shadows, but she's also in the Texas Chainsaw 2003 remake with Jessica Biel. She's the redhead. And you see her get nicely naked in Blair Witch Book of Shadows. And I just think for the sheer fact that she's just super fucking hot, I think I would just call her a scream queen for the weekend, because it would be a great weekend. But I don't know if I would define her as a scream queen.
You can tell it's spring. You can tell it's springtime in Atlanta, Georgia.
Just throwing out them jokes tonight. But no, but she really is good in Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Blair Witch Book of Shadows, I don't really fault her for that. That was just, a train wreck from the get-go. But she is good in the other film, and I think she's done some other stuff. So again, does she fall in that same category as Sherry Moon Zombie? You know what I mean? I don't know if you know who I'm talking about.
I do know who you're talking about, and I'm not really familiar with her work outside of the remake of Texas Chainsaw and Blair Witch Book of Shadows. So I can't really say. Maybe some people in the chat room are familiar with her work outside of that, but that's a tough one.
Now, what about Scout? Look, I'm going to be honest. I love, she's hot. She's super hot, but other than Rob Zombie's Halloween movies, I know she's done other horror movies, and I've seen some people mention her name here in the feed. I just don't know if I would go as far as calling her a scream queen, because like Dave said, you get kind of loose with these terms, even though, yes, okay, she's done horror films. Her biggest roles that she will be ever known for is, Laurie Strode in the Rob Zombie's adaptations of Halloween.
Right. Again, over Margot Kidder, maybe. that's like my bar.
That's your bar, which is not a high bar.
Which is not a high bar, but that's what I mean, I mean, look, Scout, is she a scream queen? I mean, she did a lot of screaming, but again, that's not the definite. That to me is not the definition of a scream queen, because if your definition of a scream queen is just an actress who's in a horror movie who screams a lot, well, but then you have your list cut out for you, because there's a lot of horror movies in the world with women that give great performances. So I think it's more than that. And Scout, I think she could be in the discussion. I think she could be in the discussion. I don't know if she's a bona fide scream queen, but I think you could put her in the discussion and make an argument for it. Is that fair to say?
I think so.
I think that's fair to say, yeah. And then what else? Let me see here. I have my little list here. I mean, like going back, when we go back even further, like this list here that I've brought up, you got, Grace Kelly. But at the same time, I'm like, maybe, I mean, but again, what horror movies were in, the 40s, the 50s, and the 60s are very different than what they are now. So you have to keep these, those things in perspective as well. Yeah, I mean,
here's a good one.
Anna Taylor-Joy. Yeah, I don't know if I would put Anna Taylor-Joy in there. Sorry, Anya Taylor-Joy. Not sure if I would do that. She's from The Witch, Sorry, what were you gonna say?
No, I got a good one for you that,
Yeah.
I wonder what your opinion is going to be on this. Betsy Palmer. I mean, she's obviously known for Friday the 13th, and she was in Part 2 briefly. She's in The Fear Resurrection. She's in Bell Witch, the movie. But obviously, she will be forever known as Mrs. Voorhees, and that's a pretty damn iconic character.
But then now, see, here we run into the problem again, where it's like, okay, she's not a heroine in Friday the 13th.
She's a villain.
She's a villain, so she's the main antagonist. She doesn't scream a lot, which isn't the defining factor, but it's always nice when it's there. Not that she doesn't at all, but she's she does that kind of. She's in control. She's dominant. It's almost like, because she was a pretty relatively well-known actress at the time, it's almost like you give her that honorary scream queen because of the prestigiousness of who she is.
Yeah.
And what she brought, like the credibility. It would be like giving a scream queen or scream king award to Donald Pleasance.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Where it's that he's not really, he's not a scream queen or king. Right. But you give him sort of an honorary degree because of the level of credibility he was able to bring to a low budget horror movie like Halloween. And you could say the same thing about Betsy Palmer in the first Friday the 13th. And I think whether or not she is a scream queen with just the label, full on label, I don't know. That's a tough one. That's a very good one. Tony's on fire tonight.
Well, because I think Betsy Palmer, and I kind of put Betsy Palmer in that Janet Leigh category. You know what I mean?
Right.
I mean, it's like these two women. I mean, because even though, Betsy Palmer, we in the horror world know her for, Mrs. Voorhees, but like Dave said, this is a well-established actress, and, really had her days in the old Hollywood days and whatnot. And the same thing with Janet Leigh. So, yeah, I think what you're saying is I would definitely, those two are up there, like, at the top of like Scream Queen Mount Everest, just kind of hanging out there, kind of on their own, where everybody else is just kind of looking up to them, going, "Thank you, ladies," that type of thing.
Yeah, it's like an honorary. Yeah, and I might give a little bit more of a pass to Janet Leigh just because of the level of what Psycho did for the quote unquote slasher genre. Because without it, can't say definitely, but without it, who knows whether or not we would have had even a Friday the 13th. So because obviously these things are insidious, no pun intended, and they grow, and sort of there's a river, and you can paint it back to the success of Psycho and other films, of course, as well. But Yeah, Betsy. I think Janet Leigh is more in the discussion just because of the level for which Psycho is at. But Betsy Palmer, that's a good one. That's a really good one.
It's tough. It is tough.
Yeah, it is. I think it becomes more of an honorary thing that you would do because of the level of credibility that she brings.
It's almost like D. Wallace here. David, I can't pronounce your last name, bro.
Antonelia, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I was just thinking that too. E.T.'s mom, E.T. is technically, I put E.T. in because Halloween is in the movie, obviously the actual day. I do put it in the children's horror themed. Like if I, have my niece and nephews over and I'm, it's the month of October and we're gonna watch scary movies and they're too young for the shit I watch, I'll throw on like an E.T. or, Edward Scissorhands or, whatever, something that's like kid friendly. And I know Spielberg didn't intend it to be a horror, children's horror movie, but I think a lot of us kind of, honorary children's horror movie, put E.T. there.
Look, D. Wallace, yeah. I mean, obviously very famous for Cujo.
And, too is Cujo.
Yeah, I mean, D. Wallace, is she a scream queen? I don't know.
The Howling, wasn't she?
Was she in The Howling? I think she might have been, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
oh my God, she's in Rob Zombie's Halloween. That's right.
Oh yeah. No, I knew that. That's just a given. I thought that was kind of enough. Yeah, she was obviously Scout's mom.
It's tough. It's like a Betsy Palmer thing. It really is.
Well, actually, I think you might be able to make more of a case for Dee Wallace as a true sort of scream queen without the asterisks.
Mm-hmm.
But Dee Wallace, a scream queen, you could. I mean, you could make the argument for it. But I think there are better arguments to be made. Like, again, like I said at the top of the show, I think there's levels, and I think it's important that when we are defining them, we pay attention to the variables because, Heather Langenkamp is not the same level of a scream queen as a Sherry Moon Zombie.
Right.
It's just not.
No.
So you can't just call them. There has to be like, I don't know. The D. Wallace is interesting.
What about Miss Lady Black herself, Elvira?
Yeah.
Gotta be careful now how you answer that question. You're talking a legendary figure in this community, man.
Yeah. No, I know. Elvira, scream queen. I mean, I think. Yeah, I think you would. I think you could put her in the category. Yes. Yeah. I just had to think about sort of her impact and
obviously it's been huge,
Yeah. I think you could. I think you could. Yeah. You certainly could do it over Margot Kidder. Poor Margot. Rest in peace, Margot.
Yeah.
She was great. And I think, unless maybe I'm out to lunch here.
Mad Cod 114, Elvira. Yeah, she's an icon, no doubt about that. When someone asked us like about a month or so ago, like a death that would impact us, Elvira is going to be one for sure because she's just such an iconic character. That will be one that will be tough to swallow when that day comes.
Yeah, I got to admit it. I'm not a big Elvira fan. That doesn't mean I'm not a fan. It just means right. I never really kind of got into her or the films. And like Michael Anderson says here, Elvira is a spoof of the genre to a certain extent. That's kind of true.
Yeah.
So there's a certain level of cheekiness to her character and to who she is. And so I think she can easily be overlooked when we're looking at scream queens. And it comes down again to sort of what's the criteria of a scream queen. And then when you think of the criteria is supposed to help you leave your biases at the door. Right. You know what I mean? And then that way we can say, well, whether I like the movie or not, whether I like the character or not, whether I like the director or not, doesn't fucking matter. Because this is the level of criteria, right? This is the objective fact. It's quantifiable then. Once you lay down, criteria, then we can actually measure it. And then it doesn't matter what I personally think, she fits the criteria. So, yeah, it's kind of interesting. Margot Kidder, I was right. She was Canadian. She was born in Yellowknife. So that's kind of cool. Yellowknife. Who the hell is born in Yellowknife? But she was, and sadly she's gone.
Because the reason why I mentioned Elvira is, God, I'm going to pronounce her name wrong. I know I'm going to butcher it. Mrs. Munster from the Munsters TV show.
Oh,
Yvonne De Carlo. I don't think I said it right. It's Yvonne De Carlo.
Something, yeah.
I know I'm butchering the crap out of it, so I apologize. But do you put her in that category, man? Because that is an iconic fucking character of Marilyn Munster. No, Marilyn's the niece.
But what else has she done? It's an iconic character. But see, here's the thing.
Linda Blair. what else has she done besides
that's true. But here's the thing. I think we need to maybe do this show again, a part 2 at some point.
Yeah.
Come back with a level of criteria. And that doesn't mean that people have to agree with it. You can come up with your own.
Sure.
It's not a hard fucking science here. But maybe Tony and I can hammer out a criteria, something that's actually measurable of what constitutes.
That was her name, Lillian Munster.
Okay, yeah. And then we can actually say whether or not, yes, she's a scream queen, or no, she's not. And that doesn't mean she's not iconic, because she is.
Oh, absolutely. Lillian Munster. Again, when you look around, at a Halloween party every year, you're going to see that person. Someone's going to cosplay that character. You don't not even Halloween parties. At these conventions, I see that character cosplayed all the time, and they're doing it literally like Yvonne did, on the TV series, which was only around for like 2 seasons. And it's one of my favorite television series to watch, especially in October. That and I'm not that big into, I was never really big into the Addams Family, but I do watch it. And I can't even think of the woman's name who played Morticia Addams. The thing of it is that I don't know if I would consider the actresses who played Morticia Addams the scream queen. More so the character Morticia Addams herself would be considered a scream queen. You know what I mean? Does that make sense of what I'm saying?
That does make sense. And there's another level of criteria that you could totally have: the actress versus the actor, right? The character versus the actor, right? Because there are sometimes because look, the character of Reagan from The Exorcist is in the pop culture consciousness like no tomorrow.
Yep.
Linda Blair is most famous for that, but Linda Blair as an actress, not so much, right? In terms of being, of stepping outside of that role. Right. So, but you look at Jamie Lee Curtis, she was able to sort of have, not a gigantic one, but she was able to have a little bit of a career removed from the horror genre.
Right, because you take now your argument with Christina Ricci with Wednesday Addams. Okay, yeah, I totally agree. But now you take the character of Wednesday Addams and you kind of put it in the stop giving me the finger.
Oh, I didn't even realize I was doing that. Subliminal messaging.
There you go. But you take the character of Wednesday Addams and she would be considered a scream princess. The character. You wouldn't maybe necessarily put Christina Ricci's version of it, but you take the character like Morticia Addams, and yeah, you would almost have to you'd have to put him in there somehow.
Right. Because then you look at which character is more iconic: the character from the Addams Family and the Addams Family Values, right, which was Christina Ricci, or the original Addams Family television show.
Right. Or do you just take the character and say, you know what, Wednesday Addams is there?
Right. And then maybe you give then Christina Ricci an honorary scream queen.
Yep.
Because then maybe that's when you give the honorary.
Yeah.
To something to that degree. But Ricci would have had to have proved herself beyond that in a certain, level of things. It's a fascinating discussion. I didn't realize that this discussion was going to be so fascinating.
No, I really didn't think so. Get through this tonight. I'm like, wow, we're getting through this tonight because it does. Because I think so many, and I've seen the videos out there, and they're great videos. I love watching, the other YouTubers who create these, like, the Scream Queen videos and top 10 and all this stuff like that. And then you see the chat community down in the comment section. Everyone's debating and whatnot. And, some of these guys tonight here in our chat, throwing out some great names, at us, it really does. You start opening it up. But then, like Dave said, are we just throwing names out there? Just like, Margot Kidder, that, Dave's been using that a lot tonight, the bar, Margot Kidder. But it's so true because I've seen so many people loosely give the title to this, individual. And I'm like, I don't know if like Christina Ricci, for example, I wouldn't give her that same title like Dave said earlier tonight. But I certainly would give the title to a Wednesday Addams character. So yeah, fascinating. Like all of a sudden when you start breaking this shit down, you're like, wow, this is deeper than I fucking thought.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it does. It goes deeper. I think what always bothered me was when somebody relatively unknown comes along and people start talking about them being a scream queen. And it's like, well, but that just because they're in a horror movie and they happen, to scream a little bit and the horror movie does well or something doesn't necessarily make them a scream queen, but maybe it does, right? I mean, maybe to somebody, no, those are my standards. You make a movie, a horror movie that does reasonably well and people go see it and you're a girl in it. But here's another thing. Do you just have to be a girl in a horror movie screaming, or do you have to be the main protagonist in a horror movie with a girl screaming and survive at some point? Because that's another thing right there, right? That's the point at the beginning of the stream, why I said that there's so many, because if your criteria is just, like I saw somebody in the chat, I forget who it was, said
comment here about Margot Kidder, because you're going to watch your game here in a minute. Margot Kidder is the 12th man on the bench, but she's on the team. That's true. She is the 12th man on the bench. She's on the team. That's all that matters.
Well, she's on the team, but that doesn't mean she gets to play. And, oh, fuck, I forgot. I lost my train of thought. What the hell was I talking about? I forget now. Maybe it'll come back to me.
Defining the scream queens and.
Oh yeah, I was just saying. Well, that's why at the beginning it's so important because, well, yeah, somebody in the chat room earlier on said, "What about Octavia Spencer from Halloween 2 because she had a great scream?" And it's like, yeah, but if that's your criteria, then I guess that would make her a scream queen, but I wouldn't put her in that. She's nowhere near that category. She was in the movie for all of 5 minutes.
Right. No, because I'm going to tell you why. All right. This is for a perfect example. Just comparisons. When you take Octavia Spencer's screaming there when she's getting stabbed to death by Michael in Halloween 2, now compare it to Marilyn Burns' performance in Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Watch the two. There's a huge difference. Okay.
And there's a huge difference in cultural impact. There's a huge difference in narrative. Yeah. Right. There's a huge difference in the impact on the story that each character had. So, again, that's why it's important to think of factors when you're trying to label a scream queen. And maybe the best thing is, like I said, to have the different levels like you do in martial arts. You can have a white belt, a blue belt, a black belt, a green belt, and maybe Jamie Lee and Amy Steele and Heather Langenkamp are like black belt scream queens, but maybe somebody like a Margot Kidder is a white belt.
Yep.
It's and then you get honoraries, right? Or I don't know. But it's fascinating stuff. Like this is, and there's so many that we haven't even touched on here. I mean, there's just there's a lot.
I never saw the TV show. I know people were talking about it earlier in the stream tonight. I never saw it. Didn't Uncle Jesse end up on that show at some point too?
Who? What show?
John Stamos, Scream Queens.
I don't know. I've never seen an episode.
Yeah, neither did I. I never saw. And yeah, I know Jamie Lee obviously was on it, but I'm almost positive that John Stamos.
He may have been. He may have been on there. You see, here's the I see what people were looking at. I can see a list here from Entertainment Tonight, and this is a list that people were. Well, I saw some people mention names on here, and I think some people were probably looking at this list. Like somebody said, "What about Naomi Watts?" I would say no.
No, God,
no, because she's so. I mean, she may be to you most known for, The Ring and maybe, The Ring too, but she's done, and I understand that she's done a couple of spooky films, but she's also done a lot of other shit that is completely outside of that. Tony Colletti, sorry, or Collette? Yeah. Tony Collette. Is it Collette? No, I wouldn't classify her that, nor would I classify Jessica Biel a scream queen. I think you can make an argument. You might be able to give her an honorary scream queen because she was in the remake, arguably one of the best remakes of a horror film of all time. So you may be able to give her an honorary one, but Jessica Biel is so well known outside of the horror genre. It's not her one defining sort of thing. I think if anybody was to,
yeah, that's like saying, because she played that. I mean, I think she's done other stuff, but the woman who played Bride of Frankenstein, I'm drawing a blank on her name right now. Someone help me out in the chat room. But it's, again, iconic character. But would you categorize her as a scream queen?
No, exactly. And I think what's important is if you and I were to sit down and actually hammer out some criteria, I think one of the biggest main criterias would be, and I think most of the chat would probably agree, is that it would be one of the biggest defining factors would be that I think we all could agree that it's probably their best known for that particular genre. They're best known to be when you think of that individual, the first thing you think of broadly, objectively now, okay, right. Not personally. We're talking about objectively. Now, for you personally might think of The Ring when you think of Naomi Watts, but I don't know. Maybe that's because that's the only thing you've seen her in, or maybe you've seen her in one other thing, but you love The Ring really, a lot, and that's what you think of. But that's a very subjective sort of view, right? Most people, I think, when they think of Jamie Lee Curtis, are going to default to Halloween because it's arguably what she's most known for. So although that's not an exact science either, I think we all could agree that that probably should be something to consider.
How does the royal thing, Duchess, that's what I was thinking of, right? If you're not a queen, you're a princess, then your Duchess is like, kind of like, someone else who's like high royalty. Well, because the reason why, where I'm going with this, I would actually put this person not in a scream queen category, but a scream Duchess, PJ Souls.
PJ Souls, scream Duchess. I mean, I love it.
Got some authority there because, let's face it, PJ Souls, you see anything you like? Yes, I do.
That should be a meme. Oh, sorry, a GIF of PJ Souls, the scene from PJ Souls going, see anything you like? And then it cuts to Tony from the show going, yes, I do. And it's like a 5-second GIF or GIF, whatever it is. I don't know if it's a hard G or a soft G, but anyway, yeah, that would be funny.
But really, she's been a big part of the horror family. I mean, she really has. You can't not mention PJ Souls' name. Carrie, Halloween.
Yep.
I think she was in April Fool's Day or April Fool's, wasn't she? I know.
Was she in April Fool's? I don't think she was in April Fool's. Was she?
I thought she was. Maybe I'm wrong. But all I know is that PJ Souls has had a huge, like I said, she's been a big part of this, community. You can't not mention her name.
She was in The Devil's Rejects.
Yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah, she is in that.
She played Susan in The Devil's Rejects. She was not in April Fool's.
She's not.
No,
but
April
Fool's. Some other kind of somewhat popular B horror film, I thought.
Yeah, well, she did a movie in 1976 called Bloodbath. She.
I'm trying not to cheat and look it up.
I'm looking it up because obviously I can't remember, so that's why I'm looking it up. But I know what you mean. It's always more fun when you can remember. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I'd call her a scream queen.
Like I said, Scream Duchess.
Scream Duchess. Yeah, I'd be okay with. Or maybe you classify anybody. Here's the thing. Maybe anybody who doesn't quite reach the queen status is a princess. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I know that we want to think of Danielle Harris as a princess because she was most known for Halloween 4 and 5 and she was young. So, she's cute. It's a princess. Right. A princess can be that, juvenile sort of childlike label, right? Sure. I understand that, but princesses can also be quite sophisticated and beautiful women,
sure,
as well. Look at Princess Diana. Right. And there's many reasons why they don't become queens.
The people's princess forever.
Right. Exactly. So maybe that's what it is. Maybe instead of, that's part of the levels, right? That's part of the hierarchy. Maybe it's like, well, there's scream queens and then there's scream princesses. Right? Where they're not the main character in every horror movie they've been in. Maybe they are not in big horror movies necessarily. Maybe they've been in some, but they've been in a lot. And maybe, that's something to think about as well. Because PJ Souls is definitely should definitely be in.
I would mention her more so in the conversation than Nancy Loomis. Even though I know Nancy Loomis was in Halloween, I know she's in Halloween 3, and I know she probably did some other stuff as well too. But I just wouldn't put her in that same. I feel like Nancy, if someone else came along to play the role of Annie, she would have been fine with it. I almost feel like Nancy Loomis was there because Tommy Lee Wallace and her, I think, were married at the time. And I think she's like, yeah, if I can do it, why not? Like that type of thing. But like, I don't really see her in the Scream Queen category, That makes sense?
Nancy Loomis, who's Nancy Keys now. No, I don't. That you could make her an honorary something.
Yeah, because I forgot, Kyle. Thank you, Kyle. Yeah, you're right. I forgot about she's in the fog as well.
Well, she was in the fog, but I mean, well, what does that mean then?
Right.
Is it just somebody who's in horror movies? Because I mean, it's not like Nancy Loomis in the fog was screaming, yelling, running. She was the assistant to Janet Leigh's character.
Right.
Right. And I love Nancy Keys. But for God's sake, she always looks like she's got this face like she's pissed off. She always looks like she's pissed off at something.
Permanent resting bitch face.
Yeah. So it's that thing where it's like, okay, she was in the fog. Well, is that your level then? Okay. Well, I don't know. I just think you're going to run into trouble. She was in the fog. She was in Halloween. Yeah. She was in Halloween 2 for 3 seconds.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, I don't know if I would classify her, classify that.
Now, I got a good one for you.
Yeah.
Before we get to the questions, Drew Barrymore. Now, the reason why I'm throwing her out there, not just because of Scream, but like I said earlier, you could kind of throw E.T. in the family kid, friendly horror genre, and she's obviously, in E.T. Firestarter, which is Stephen King. She's in that. Obviously, Scream.
Yeah.
Would you put her in the category? Now, I only asked that because really I am going back to, Scream, as I'm wearing Drew on my t-shirt tonight here. And you thought she was the star of the movie. And when she's killed off there, spoiler if you haven't seen it, when she's killed off there in the opening scene, that shocked the shit out of everybody.
Oh, it did.
At the time, this is, America's sweetheart too. She really was. I mean, she was America's sweetheart.
Well, Right. And she was relatively really well known up to that point. She was giving because she was originally, I believe, wasn't she originally tapped to play Neve Campbell's character? And she something like that. Somebody in the chat room let me know. There was some reason she actually ended up playing. There was something like that. I think she was interested or thought she was anyways. because Nev Campbell, up to that point, Party of Five, okay. Courtney Cox, Friends had only been on a year, to that point.
Yep.
The cast was relatively unknown, not completely, not like Halloween, but relatively unknown.
It was Jamie Kennedy. He was sort of, he had some little stuff.
A little bit, but for me, I wouldn't classify Drew Barrymore as a scream queen. If anything, maybe going back to the criteria that we were sort of discussing, I would put her in the princess category.
Yeah.
That's where I would put her, because she's not defined by that movie. There's so many movies she's done, so many roles she's had. If anything, she's defined by standing on David Letterman's desk and flashing him. I mean, that's just as iconic as her role in Scream.
Yeah, no, and Vince Malley, thanks, man. You're right. I remember now seeing this. You're right. She was supposed to play Sydney, but she thought it would have been cool to kill her off in the opening sequence. I think she was the one who championed that to Wes Craven and said, look, no one's going to, and she's right. Nobody saw that shit coming. And when you saw that shit, you're like, holy fuck, they just killed Drew Barrymore here, in the opening, scene of this fucking movie. Well, where are we going?
It's the Janet Leigh thing.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, Janet Leigh was an iconic actress in 1960. And she's in Psycho for a little bit, but she's certainly not she's not in there a lot. And when she was killed in the way she was like, oh my God, it would be like casting today, somebody prestigious and through the marketing, you don't lead on that this person is going to kick the bucket very early.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't necessarily classify, I wouldn't go Drew Barrymore scream queen. I'd go her screen princess.
Sure. And just to clarify, I didn't say E.T. was a kid horror movie. I said it was an appropriate kid-friendly movie to pop in the month of October if you're, mixing up, like the Hocus Pocus movies and stuff like that, and you're trying to, E.T.'s because it has Halloween in there, the actual, there's scenes, with an ET of Halloween. That's why I put it in that, kind of kid-friendly, scary movie. So
right, exactly. Okay, well, hey, it's 5 minutes early, but do you want to go over to the chat?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, let's do it. Okay, this is your opportunity to ask Tony and I anything you want. You can ask us about Scream Queens. You can ask us about, whatever you want. It's not limited to the topic of the show. But, we will open up the floor now. I don't know how many of you have been with us since the beginning of the show, so you might ask some things we already covered. But I'll let you know, Tony and I will let you know if that is indeed the case. So, yes. So now is the time for those of you that are generous and give super chats to help support the show and the channel. This is when you can do that. And I appreciate you waiting, of course, because we'd hate to miss it going up. But before we get to that, actually, there was a super chat that Tony and I missed last week on last week's show that we promised to get to this week. And the individual is...
Get to you, man.
Sorry?
Because we both commented to him and left
Yeah, so we apologize for that. It's never personal. If we miss it or we miss if we miss a super chat it's always by accident. I mean, we because the thing's going by so fast. I can see what's there, but if it goes by and it disappears, sometimes these things happen, right? But if it does, if you send in a super chat and we have not answered it, then by all means, don't be afraid to reach out and let us know. Anyways, this super chat was from... Where are we here? It was last week, right? Yeah, it was last week. I think it was from PC Pierce, right? Was that the name?
Yeah, I believe so.
I think that was it. And did he ask? Yes. Okay. You missed my super chat earlier. Okay. So I think there's, here we go. So he says, would Rob Zombie's Halloween 1 have worked better if the story was told non-linear, flipping back and forth between past and present? That's a really good question, PC. It might have, because you may have been able to sort of lessen the blow of the sort of just kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? You might have been able to sort of minimize the impact and blow of the toxicity that is just the raunchiness and wild white trash hick that's all, because the first 30 minutes is essentially all that. If you had sort of maybe bounced back and forth, it might have made it a little more interesting from a narrative perspective. And maybe we as a viewer, myself included, might have been able to buy into it a little more, perhaps. That's a great sort of observation. I can't say for certain whether or not it would have made the movie better, but it might have been able to make you feel a little less sort of like, whoa, what the fuck? Jesus Christ. You know what I mean? What do you think, Tony?
I agree. Without basically repeating everything you just said, I pretty much side exactly with what Dave just said here.
All right, cool. And I think that was the only one.
Yeah, that was.
That was, yeah. Okay, cool. All right, let's head over to the chat room now, guys. It's all open. It's all yours.
Brandon Gregory, super chat. How about Adrienne Barbeau and Emma Roberts for Scream Queens? Emma? Well, I don't know if I'd put Emma as a Scream Queen.
I don't think. I mean, look, she's done a few things.
Yeah.
But I don't think when I think of Emma Roberts, I don't necessarily think that her career is defined by that.
Yeah.
And I think she's so young that she's probably going to be defined by other things.
Good one, Emma. That was a good one.
Yeah, yeah. Adrienne Barbeau. Maybe you might be able to put her in the discussion. Perhaps. Again, it comes down to, no, I don't think I would put her in there. No. I got to be decisive. No, I wouldn't put her in there. Just because she's in a horror movie and in maybe some cult horror movies doesn't necessarily mean you're a Scream Queen. And I think I love Adrienne Barbeau, and she was beautiful back in the day. Oh, yeah. But she still looks good.
Stick to your guns, man. Stick to your guns.
She still looks good, but I wouldn't necessarily think of her. Super chat from Aaron Prito, just supporting the channel. Thank you, Aaron. Much appreciated. David Quintanilla. Thank you, David. Much appreciated. Says, sorry about my last name. Just call me Dave Q. Dave Q. Love it.
Sure.
Off topic. Dark Crystal prequel on Netflix with puppets, not CGI. I'm stoked. Thoughts? I didn't even know there was one.
Yeah, dude. This is news to me. Literally, as you are typing that, I had no clue.
Wow, I'm going to have to. I haven't watched The Dark Crystal in years.
Mega years, like a lot of years.
Yes, so I'm going to have to revisit The Dark Crystal before I even attempt to watch this sequel. That's really cool. Thanks for letting us know.
Talk about later on.
Yeah, exactly. All right, Tony, you pick one.
Hold on. Let's see here. Mark Patton, Jim D. Mark Patton as a Scream Queen.
Excuse me.
Mark Patton as a Scream Queen.
Mark Patton as a Scream Queen? You mean a Scream King, maybe?
Well, isn't he? Yeah, he's the guy from Nightmare on Elm Street 2. He's the lead.
Yes, I know that. But just because he's gay doesn't mean that we should classify him as a Scream Queen. Yeah, again, I mean, but there you go. Does that mean Mark Patton, because he's gay and because of this stereotype, we should classify him as a Scream Queen because he's maybe a little more outwardly feminine? Maybe there was he might find it cute and funny. Mark Patton, a Scream.
I know he calls himself that.
Of course he does. But that more has to do with the whole sort of novelty of, it's kind of like, oh, I'm gay, that's why I'm a Scream Queen. You know, it's Mark Patton
because, you know, the thing that I love about the horror genre, and it is a good one to put him up there.
I think it is. I think you can make an argument because he's defined not only by horror, but that one movie.
Yeah, and the thing that what I was starting to say here about the horror genre that I loved is that, whether you look at it as smut or whatever, they have been very equal, very, very equal since the beginning of horror films. You always have a strong female lead role, even going back to the old monster films. You have your villainous dude. You can never sit there and say in horror films that, they were always like, demeaning to women, and, no, women always came out strong. This is why we're doing this show tonight. And, here's an example. Unfortunately, there's this, the MMA fighter who, identifies as a female who just literally almost killed a woman in the ring. You know what I mean? It takes you diminish by having these categories, but then you start making exceptions to the rules here with Mark Patton. And to me, it takes down the value of what the importance of a scream queen really is. And nothing against the sexuality or anything like that, but because the scream queen and the female heroine in horror films is so, it's a big part of what makes horror films and the formula of horror films successful, I think it would diminish it a little bit.
Yeah, I think if we were being serious about it and actually looking at it, the reason why he calls himself a scream queen, sure, we know why, obviously, but it's also because the term scream king isn't in the pop culture consciousness, and there really is no scream king, and that's primarily because of the formula and the execution of the way, and this goes back to the 20s, the 30s, the 40s, the 50s, the damsel in distress. You can go all the way back to the
Nosferatu.
Yes, exactly. And, and go back to the Hammer films, and you can go back. I mean, it's a very cliched sort of, the woman, because she's more vulnerable. It's more, yeah. There's a multitude of reasons why that trope sort of became, sort of a thing. But at the same time, I think if we're being serious about it, I don't think there's anything wrong with calling Mark Patton a scream king. I don't think he calls himself that, yes, because he's gay, and of course it's kind of cute to call himself, a queen. I get it. I understand it, and that's totally awesome. But I don't think there's anything wrong with calling him a scream king. The problem is we don't have enough kings to be called scream kings, and then you start looking at what's the criteria for a scream king. Maybe we do have a lot of scream kings, but it's a different set of criteria, right? Like Donald Pleasance, maybe he's a scream king, but is he really defined? Like, you know what I mean? There's so many different kind of variables at play. So I agree with what you said. And I think that it's important to,
Donald Pleasance is to the horror community as Thanos is to the Avengers.
Yeah. That's essentially. Yeah. Great questions, guys. Okay, let's see here. Frank Riker. Thanks, Frank. D&T, if you could travel in time, would you visit your older self or an ancient ancestor? No effect on the line. I would revisit my older self. My older self. That'd be scary because maybe my older self wouldn't exist. Wouldn't that be creepy if you travel 30 years into the future, but you're not alive?
That would be weird.
That would be creepy, but then you don't know when you died.
Dude, you stop talking. You're writing a movie right now, man.
That is fucking creepy, dude. Think about that. You travel into the future.
Dave just brain ninja'd me, man.
To meet your future self. But your future self doesn't exist. And you're not that far into, look, if you and I travel 200 years into the future, we're not going to be around, right? So that's not much of a shock. But if we travel 30 years into the future, we're only 70. So, I mean, not that people don't die prior to that, but obviously we would like to think that we're going to live at least well into our 80s, at least, right? So if you travel, let's say even 25 years, that puts us at 65 and we're not around. But are we not around because we're dead? And it's like, we got to figure this out. It's like, oh, fuck, what does that mean? Like, that's just.
That's past me, and let me take another hit. Deep conversation. God, man, that's
right.
Deep shit.
So to answer Frank's question, I would probably, I would be tempted to go into the future to visit my older self, but because knowing the future and it's scary, I think it's best that we don't know what's going to happen. So we let things spontaneously happen. And, I'm now on second thought, I might go back. What about you, Tony?
No, I mean, as far as would I go back in time?
Would you go into the future to visit your older self, or would you go back to visit an ancient ancestor?
Honestly, I'd probably just go back in time, not so much just because I'm going to visit an ancient ancestor, but just out of the sheer curiosity of what life was like, back then, what was going on. Because we were having this kind of a deep conversation last night about this, that if we were able to talk to ourselves back in the early 90s or mid 90s, and if we were to sit there and say, you know, man, one day you're going to meet some dude up in fucking Canada, you're going to have a live streaming show on this platform where you're going to be able to talk to each other, and people from around the country, you know, between the United States, maybe even the world, because I think we get some people around the world watching us, they're going to watch you guys and all this shit. I'd look at my future self like, what the fuck are you talking about, man? You're on fucking crack. You know, because none of this existed for us, you know? So like the fact that if my future self went back in time herself, or, you know, and was able to, you know, have that type of conversation, I wouldn't believe it, that there's no way the technology was going to evolve to that extent. And we were talking about that last night. So probably go back in time just out of this year. What was life like? What were people doing? You know, how did they just exist? Like what the fuck was going on?
Very cool. Very cool. Super chat, Aaron Prito. Thank you. Aaron says, "Hey Dave, would you please review the movie Killer Clowns from Outer Space?" I don't do reviews on this channel, Aaron. So I probably won't. That doesn't mean I won't talk about it one day, but like an official review on what I think of the movie. Unfortunately, I don't really do that on the channel. But thank you for supporting the channel nonetheless.
Absolutely.
Let's see here.
Kyle Sanders, just to get you, buddy, really quick. We are going to talk about Stranger Things. We're just trying to. Me and Dave are watching the 2 seasons right now, and I think we're trying to get it as close, because we're getting closer to premiere of season 3. So yeah, it's coming. Believe me, it is definitely coming. Promise.
Yep, it is. It is. We're just rewatching them now so we can brush up on it. Let's see here. Michelle Larch says, question for you guys. If you could go back in time, what do you think you would, back in time again, what do you think you would be today?
Ooh,
if you can go, I'd probably, yeah.
I love what I do. I think you guys see that in the work, in the amount of effort I put into the work, that that's what I would do. I love it.
Absolutely. Yep. Super chat from Tyler Trigg. Thank you, Tyler. Do you think there is a way to make the Scream franchise darker or more scary, like a reimagining, such as tying Ghostface to a singular person? Anything's possible. Do I think it's do I think there's a way? Yes, I think there is a way. The Scream franchise is not sort of out there now because it suffers from redundancy. Not that, I mean, all horror movies do, but the shtick and the gimmick that made Scream successful, the catalyst that drove that narrative forward, the gimmick was essentially, the magic trick was revealed at the end of the first movie. So in a lot of ways, even though the characters change and you can build some mystery around who it actually is, you're almost watching the same movie over again.
There's a key factor too that Craven hit on just literally at the right time. Had he done this a year later, it probably wouldn't have been as effective, but cell phones were just becoming, powerful enough to be able to do that. So you're going to need the cell phone factor. You can't set the movie in the 80s. And caller ID hadn't until the second movie, which that's what I'm saying. If a year later, caller ID's out there, you don't have the same impact as the original Scream did because you don't have caller ID. So people are still using landlines. That's the other thing. So you're going to need a cell phone to call a landline and pick up the phone, because honestly, if you set Scream in today, most people spend their times texting. They don't call each other on the phone, even though I understand they try to get that across in Scream 4. But the reality of it is that most people today spend their communication texting. They don't.
No, it's true. And of course, the younger generation is going to also text less and call even less. I mean, I remember, and I'm sure you guys do, when Facebook was a big deal. Facebook now is for, older guys like me and Tony and, your parents. I mean, kids today, teenagers today, even college kids. I mean, it's not, again, it's generally speaking. It's not to say that nobody of that age is on Facebook, but generally speaking, they're not on Facebook. I mean, my buddy Bruce has 2 teenagers, 18 and 16. And I ask him, are they on Facebook? No, they're not on Facebook. They don't care about that. No, they're too busy, Snapchatting and FaceTiming, whatever. And I'm like, what the fuck is that? Like, I'm like, Facebook is like for your parents now. You know what I mean? So even that is not a cool thing for the younger generation anymore. So it's almost like if you were going to do Scream, because it's so reliant on the phone and the shtick of, I don't know. I mean, is there a way to reimagine it? Probably.
It's tough because you almost have to set it in that exact same year, because cell phones, even a year before that, they weren't really as good as they were at that right time. Right. And again, a year later, you got the whole caller ID thing, and the other thing, the tracking people. Today in this day and age, I mean, my God, you can find the motherfucker real quick. You're not gonna be able to be elusive like Ghostface was, in the original film. That's
right.
It's very hard to do that and make it believable. And that's why I said you can't really set it in the 80s, because cell phones, forget about it. You need that cell phone, key factor, because you want to make the calls from in the house and you want to have the mobility. So if you're going to do a reimagining of Scream, you literally, you're going to have to almost do it in the same year to make it believable.
Well, yeah, or you remake the movie, but you remake it for a modern audience, and you would have to change the formula. You don't necessarily change the gimmick up of the, the whodunit, and there's a killer on campus, or there's people, you can do that. There's nothing necessarily proprietary about that, but you would have to change the shtick up a bit to remake Scream verbatim. I'm not so sure, but to remake it darker and scarier, yeah, I think there is a way, but it probably wouldn't be the Scream that we know. It would be some hybrid sort of version of it, because technology just continues to expand, exponentially, and what was hot and popular last year is no longer hot and popular. So, and the way we communicate, is changing. Nobody calls each other anymore. I can't remember the last time I actually talked to my girlfriend on the phone.
Right. I mean, really think about that. Right.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Like we just exchange texts and emails.
Right. Or you see each other in person.
Or, well, yeah, but to get together, it's like I will text her, say, hey, why don't we get together? Okay, why don't we get to, like, it's that kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Great question, though. Let's see here. A couple of super chats came in. Before we get to those, let's get some non-super chat ones. Davey Dread says, can't wait for Godzilla, King of the Monsters. Me too, buddy. Cody Snyder says, where is Bruce, Dave? Bruce is at home. I think he's probably done work, and he's probably at home. He works in the film industry here in Toronto, so he has long days, and I would imagine he's probably home chilling like a villain. Let's see here. Steve 3 says TikTok is where they at probably. I don't know what he's talking about. Let's see. Vegas Courier says I do Facebook a little and Instagram. Yeah, a lot of people are on Instagram, right? Very rarely are people talking on the phone anymore, unless it's business related. Like even today, I had a guy who I haven't seen in a long time. He sent me a text saying he's got a movie trailer that he wants me to do, and it's not an actual movie trailer. It's more of a corporate thing for a hotel in Chicago. And he texted me. I haven't talked to the guy in I don't know how long. And he texted me, "Hey, listen, I need your trailer voice." And so I text him back. Great, yeah. He's like, okay, great. I said, send me the script. Here's the rate. So he says, okay, I should get the script, tonight. I'll send it to you. It's all through text. No, I wasn't talking to him. Yeah. We hadn't seen each other or talked to each other in I don't know how many years, and he still didn't pick up the phone. So yeah, it's interesting. Super chats from Aaron Prito. Thank you again, Aaron. D. I've been designated to D now. Could you make a video about the Saw franchise? No, but Tony and I might do maybe a show where we talk about a couple of the movies, maybe.
I've only seen the first one.
Yeah, I've seen the first two, I think.
Oh, okay.
So about the franchise, yeah, I haven't seen a lot of them.
Maybe I'll watch the second one just because Dave has, but I mean, I like the first one was all right. Just, Yeah,
I like the first one a lot. I mean, that was what put James Wan on the map.
Absolutely.
So the first one's actually really good, but the series as a whole, I think is, what do I think it is? A fucking shit show. Frank Riker, thank you, Frank. D&T, who do you want to play you in your biopic?
DiCaprio. Can't go wrong with him. I'll probably get an Academy Award out of it, or at least nominated.
That's good. That's good. Despite the fact that you guys don't look anything alike, and despite the fact that I don't look anything alike him.
We're the same age.
Well, he's a little bit older. Yeah, he's like 43 or whatever he is. Okay. I'm going to say, you know what? I'm going to pick DiCaprio. Why the hell not? I'll pick DiCaprio too to play me. That's funny. That's a funny question, Frank. Let's see here. David Johnson says Dave is one of the greatest voice actors of all time. Well, hang on a sec here. Let's not, I appreciate the sentiment, but I don't
being the greatest commercial photographer. Yeah,
that's I think now, do I think I could? I mean, I appreciate that. I obviously have confidence in myself and my abilities, and I've done well for myself. But I haven't had a chance to do what Frank Welker has done, or Mal Blanc has done, or oh God, the list goes. Don LaFontaine. I mean, the great thing is that I was able to communicate with Don LaFontaine through email a year before he died. And I sent him a couple of my promos I was doing for The Sopranos here on a network in Canada, and he loved them. So that was a big sort of kind of thing. Now that was, 10, 12 years ago, I guess. But that was a lot of fun. But I appreciate that you think I'm good enough to even say that. So thank you very much. Let's see here. Tony, you pick one. I'm like hogging the fucking chat.
Scream Queens or Kings. I'm sorry, Scream Kings. We'll hold that for another topic for another night.
Yes, I think it would be cool to do a Scream Kings.
Well, here we go. Vince Malley. Since Scream depends on current horror trends, do you think there was a sequel? It would be in the '80s slasher throwback or a psychological horror A24 style film. I think that kind of goes what we were just talking about here. What Dave said is true. You could set Scream currently, and if you did, I'd probably, an A24 style for sure would be really nice to see. The throwback to the '80s, again, you need that cell phone. It's almost impossible to do it without the cell phone.
Well, the first Scream, I mean, cell phones were not a huge.
I know, but how do you communicate in the '80s to get the person on the phone? And what are you calling from the neighbor's house? How do you?
Right. Yeah,
that's what I'm saying. The cell phone is so important to have. Yeah. As the killer for Scream, that it's almost impossible to set it in the '80s. Set it in today, like Dave said, it is very possible. You just have to kind of work with the times to make it believable. And I think that's why they're having a hard time with Scream 5. You sell that. Although my boy Chris, shout out to you, great supporter on my Instagram page. He made a comment on the Ghostface picture I posted yesterday. He said, what if they did Scream 5 and the spin was that Dewey was behind this whole shit from the get-go? And I said, I thought about that before, just as a fucked up spin on Scream, that if they did do a Scream 5, that it was actually Dewey from day one who really was behind all of this shit. That'd be a fucked up twist, but I could see that happening. So
well,
but again, I think that's the reason why we haven't seen a Scream 5, other than the fact that Wes is no longer with us, is that how do you make it believable that you can't track the motherfucker down through the current technology?
Yeah, it's how do you do that? That's why I said the shtick had a shelf life. It was the gimmick, the magic trick is very difficult to do today. Since Scream depends on
walkie-talkies all the way, that means everybody in the movie's got to have a walkie-talkie too.
It can be tricky. It's a good question. Do I think A24 with a psychological horror, what the other person said, I think there could be a way to reimagine a Scream movie for today's audiences, but the catalyst and the concept and the device which is fueling the narrative forward, wouldn't necessarily be a telephone, or a cell phone. It might be through some software like a program like WhatsApp or Instagram, or it would kind of evolve to that degree. I don't know. It's interesting. Let's see here. Grave Warmer. Thank you. Grave Warmer says, would you say that Millie Bobby Brown's career has Scream Queen potential written on it so far due to the impact of Stranger Things?
I think Millie Bobby Brown is probably going to, if she continues to hone her acting skills, she's going to be on the Meryl Streep trajectory.
Yeah, if she doesn't get caught up in her own little
Prima donna.
yeah, I think I hope the people around her are good, because she strikes me as somebody who is well, I mean, let's face it, a lot of people thought Dakota Fanning, who was a brilliant child actor, same with Elijah Wood, were on the trajectory to become, I mean, but to make the transition, even if you are stellar, to make the transition from child actor to adult actor is very, very difficult. And not a lot of people do it and do it successfully. People have, but it's not a one, and it's not a done deal. And, I mean, when Dakota Fanning was tearing it up in the movies that she was in, I mean, she was more believable. You could make the argument that she was one of the most believable little actor. Fucking amazing.
Absolutely.
And where is she now? And I mean, I think she might even have a little role in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Yeah, she pops up here and there.
She pops up, but she's not near the level that now that kid's got talent, luck out. No.
Yep.
And Elijah Wood, same thing. I mean, he's been in a few more things thanks to Lord of the Rings, but since Lord of the Rings, he's relatively been silent. He's been in things. I'm not saying he hasn't been in anything, but in terms of reaching that level, no.
Yeah, he hangs with, unfortunately, his crew is, I think it's him and Tobey Maguire and Leonardo DiCaprio. I think they all kind of hang, and Jake Gyllenhaal. I think they're all kind of like friends. I see like photos of them, and like, they don't have that same type of, like Jake and Leo, they were child actors that obviously, and Joaquin Phoenix, child actor that obviously,
and keep in mind, I agree. And keep in mind, a big part of success, that the half the battle of success is surrounding yourself with the right people. And I don't know what circle Millie Bobby Brown is currently in, and what sort of level of influence or people she has her best interest, and whether or not she's smart enough to be able to not get caught up in all the attention that she's getting, because she strikes me as somebody who's quite the little arrogant 14 or 15-year-old, and that doesn't mean that she's not going to make the transition and that she's not talented. She is talented. That's irrelevant to what I'm saying. But I'm not confident that we're going to see her at 30 years old winning Oscars. I think she's talented enough to do it, but who knows?
I think Nikki Sixx said it best. Nikki Sixx, the bassist for Motley Crue. He didn't want Motley Crue to be this big, big flash, to come out in the 80s. He wanted that long-term trajectory, because you can get real big real quick, and when you do, the quicker you get up there is the quicker you go. You rather be in it for the fucking long haul and look, 10, 20, 30, 40 years. And that's why Motley is still pretty much relevant to this day. Of course, the Dirt, coming out here a month or so ago helps. People have been in the Motley Crue frenzy over the last couple months since that movie. But the analogy is true, because, you can be a bright star like she's become real fast in Stranger Things. Godzilla, it's remained to be seen how she's going to be in this. And isn't that her first kind of big movie? I mean, really?
Oh yeah.
So I mean, it's it remains to be seen, what she does, because she could be a real quick flash in the pan and we never hear from her again.
Yeah, it's true. There's a lot of talented child actors over the years that have ceased to exist, when they hit their late teens. So we'll see, though. We'll see. I mean, she's a talented young girl. Okay, a few more minutes here. Let's see here. Aaron Prito says, Dave, are you a gamer? Not really. I mean, I like playing games as much as the next person, but I wouldn't classify myself as a gamer. Kirk Raystraw says, I've always thought a horror movie based on a YouTube stalker could be good if done right. Call it The Subscriber. Ooh, I like that. That's good. Yeah, no, it's those kind of things are always fun, and I'm surprised somebody hasn't done it yet.
Yeah. Colin, Altman, Dave, and Tony, what about Danielle Harris? Do you think she could have been a bigger star and a scream queen than she is currently? I don't know what happened. Look, I mean, obviously, another good example, you see a great performance from a young kid in Halloween 4. I don't know who was managing her career at that time, but certainly you saw she had potential as an actress. I think a couple things hurt, and it's going to sound mean, but her height really hurts her. She's not a tall girl. I think she is barely 5 feet. And I'm not saying that there's not 5 feet successful actresses who are really good, and that, I'm not saying that at all. But, you know, height does help you in this business, especially when you're going to be on camera standing next to guys who are 6 feet tall. It's a big reason why, you know, they do look for people with height in movies, because it's got to show up good in, you know, on camera, because it's going to look wonky if not. Go back and rewatch Rob Zombie's Halloween. Watch the specific shots with Tyler Mane and Danielle Harris in the shots and how Rob Zombie filmed that. He did that intentionally, because fucking Tyler Mane, all he had to do is pick up his leg and step on Harris. That's it. You know, but it's the reason why, unfortunately, that, you know, women who don't have that height, you know, that 5'7", 5'8" height, tend to get overlooked. So I think had she been a taller woman and maybe, you know, career guidance was a little bit better, sure. I mean, her potential, anyone's potential, you know, if you're willing to hone your skills and work hard, you know, sky's the limit.
Yeah, Danielle Harris, obviously, back in the day, she, you know, when she became a young woman, I mean, obviously she's, you know, she's very attractive, but Tony's right, she's not very tall, and I mean, look, I don't know what life choices Danielle Harris made in the early to mid 90s,
right?
That would have been the prime real estate for her to get a career going outside of the Halloween franchise. I don't know if she got caught up with the wrong people. She got caught up maybe with the wrong lifestyle. She got caught up with the wrong agent. And then she wasn't getting things. But you know, horror movies are a dime a dozen, and they're really easy, and they're, you know, quick pay. And she maybe was like, okay, you know, to keep me out there, to keep my creative juices flowing, I'll do a couple of horror movies. And then before you know it, you look back and you're like, oh, I'm the horror movie girl, you know, and no actor necessarily sets out and says, this is, you know, you at least all good actors sort of say, okay, I you know, I'd love to do that, like, you know, and I'd love to do this, but you leave that door open for spontaneity to kind of see where things go. And unfortunately for Danielle Harris, it didn't go that route. But Tony is right. I don't think Danielle Harris would have necessarily been a leading lady. I think she would have been more of, you know, the best friend, and it's nothing to do with her acting abilities. Looks matter in Hollywood. They do. And it's not personal, it's business. And and Tony's right. She wouldn't necessarily have been playing opposite somebody like, you know, Hugh Jackman.
Right.
I mean, it's not, you know, but maybe in some story, maybe she would have. Maybe that was the whole point. A small girl, big guy. I mean, who knows? But generally, who knows? I don't know. We'll have to see. She obviously, only she knows in terms of the decisions that she made or, you know, didn't make. She strikes me as somebody, and I don't know her personally, but she strikes me as somebody that may not necessarily be easy to get along with. And she's got attitude. She's she's fiery.
Yeah.
Right. And who knows whether or not that fire and that spunk has also affected her ability to progress in other areas, because it's possible.
I've often wondered, you know, about the truth behind, and I know we got to wrap it up here, but in that, you know, I've often wondered the truth about, you know, Halloween 6. You know, was it? I know she got emancipated, and I sympathize for that. You know, that she did all of that to get the part, but, you know, like, how much of it was her personality also, you know, not wanting to do the movie? You know, like, was there some type of conflict that happened? You know, because we all knew the importance of having her play this character come back, and she didn't. So I've always wondered, because I never really heard anything from the producing side of it. You know, and
right.
What happened, like, with Malika Akkad and Mustafa. Well, obviously we can't from Mustafa because he's no longer with us. But, you know, was there any type of?
Well, he was alive then.
That's what I'm saying. He wasn't, but now he can't. We don't know.
Oh, yeah.
Like, now we don't know from the producing side of it, like, what really went down. So, like, yeah, because I've always thought that about her. I mean, I love her. You know, she's the best. Halloween 4. You know, but I could tell. You can just tell, man, when you know someone based on just by looking at him, like, yep, you're going to be some trouble for me. Good trouble, but you're going to be some trouble.
Yeah. And no, it's true. I mean, you know, you look at Danielle Harris's role on Roseanne, and I can't help but think that she's just playing a fictional version of herself. She's quite quite fiery, and I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing, but it has, and I have no evidence to suggest that it has, but when you listen to her and when you watch her speak, and I don't know her personally, and you see how fiery she is over other things in her life and how opinionated she is, it makes you wonder whether or not her personality has played a role. Maybe not. It's just something to think about. Yep. But nonetheless, okay. Couple more questions. We'll take some rapid fire here. Let's see. Davey Dredd says Danielle Harris was in Tony Scott's Last Boy Scout. That's right, with Bruce Willis.
Yeah, she was a kid still.
Yeah. She was like 12 or 13 or something. Let's see. Manhammer AR-15 says, Dave, do you like The Good Son? I do love The Good Son.
Macaulay Culkin and
his best performance.
Yeah.
Yep. Let's see. Super chat from Chris Baber. Hey, Chris, how you doing, buddy?
Yes.
Thanks for supporting the channel. If you had to spend 3 days locked in a cell with no cell phone, who are you hanging with? Danielle Harris, Kyle Richards, or Betty White? Betty fucking White.
Single Danielle Harris? Probably Danielle Harris.
I'm hanging with Betty White because Betty White would keep me laughing. She'd keep me, thinking about things. She'd be a riot. And the story she'd tell and wait a minute, are we talking about Betty White now or Betty White from 50 years ago? Because she was kind of cute 50 years ago.
Yeah, she was. I still would go with Harris, man. Single Harris? Yes, sir.
That's fine. Yeah, I probably would too. Let's see here. Hannibal Lecter, I love your videos and streams. Thank you, Hannibal. Much appreciated, Hannibal. David Green says, are you a fan of Hello, Mary Lou Prom Night 2? I haven't seen that. I mean, I know the movie you're talking about, but I haven't seen it.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Let me see. Trying to get some. Dirt Todd Skiing says, back to Scream Queens. Barbara Crampton. Renamator from Beyond. You're Next. Castle Freak. The Lords of Salem. We Are Still Here. Puppet Master. Body Double. Yeah. Barbara Crampton. You could throw in the discussion. You could. You could make an argument for it. Yeah, you certainly could.
Steve 3, have you ever walked out of a movie? Yep, Halloween 2, Rob Zombies.
Have I ever walked out of a movie? No, I've never walked out of a movie, but I have definitely turned off movies. And The Grudge Part 2 was one of those movies I turned off. Okay.
Favorite comedy, Dave? Kyle Sanders.
Oh, well, there's a lot, but I would have to go. It's a toss-up between Planes, Trains, and Automobiles with John Candy and Steve Martin, classic, and the original Vacation from 1983 with Chevy Chase. Yeah. And maybe Ghostbusters in there too. It's like it's just there. I'm old school. What can I say? I'm 40, so
Stripes is another great one.
Oh yeah, Stripes.
That's hard not to think of that. A lot of old Bill Murray and Ramis and Candy's in that.
Yeah.
That's a really good cast, actually. When you think of Stripes, that's definitely up there. It's
a great movie. It's a great movie. Okay, we'll take a couple more. Let's see. The Guy. You seen John Wick 3 yet? Not yet, but I'm definitely going to see it. Matt Code 114 says he turned off Lawnmower Man 2. Yeah, I know the feeling. Michael Anderson. My Cousin Vinny. Love My Cousin Vinny. That one should be on the list too. Yeah, that was cool.
I Shot the Clerk.
Yeah, it does. The Two Utes. I'm sorry. What is a Ute? Oh, I'm sorry, sir. The Two Youths.
Dave, my biological clock is ticking. Dude, there are so many great lines from that movie.
She was great in that movie.
Fire in that movie.
She was hot in that movie.
Oh yes, sir. She's still hot now, man. I mean, when you see her in the new Spider-Man movies, I mean, she's still. Marissa Tomei is aging. Italian women, man. Whew. Yeah. Pounds.
Yes. What About Bob should be on my list. Of course. That's Richard Dreyfuss, Bill Murray. It absolutely is one of my favorite comedies. Yeah. My comedy list would be like those 3 or 4 that I mentioned. Yeah. Oh God. What About Bob? It's just fucking, he's great.
Yeah.
What? You think he's gone? He's not gone. Is this some kind of new radical therapy? You see, he's never gone. Fucking love that. All right, guys, that's going to do it for Tony and I here on episode EP23 of Two Dudes and Some Bullshit. We want to thank each and every one of you who tuned in and asked questions. Again, if we don't get to your questions, nothing personal, of course. There's just so many. And between the super chats and the regular, we got to bounce back and forth. But we definitely appreciate you tuning in and having the discussion. I think you guys are awesome. The discussion in the chat room, I glance over at it every so often while I'm talking, and you guys are just knocking it out of the park. It's just awesome. And today's show was a lot of fun. So next week's show is back to Sunday, correct? So only 5 days from now.
Yeah, short of. I mean, I know your birthday's around the horizon, dude.
That's okay. That's okay. I'm pretty sure I can do Sunday. It'll be Sunday, May the 26th.
I mean, you're an old man. You're gonna be an old middle-aged man now, man.
Hey, you little fucking piece of shit. So and then I'll let you guys know if you follow me on Facebook and YouTube here. I'll let you guys know towards the end of the week what that show is going to be.
That's right. And where can you on Facebook?
Yes, at facebook.com/manythingsdave McRae. Link is in the description. All my links are down there, as well as the link to Tony Michael's Instagram. If you're not following Tony on Instagram, do it now, because he's posting some awesome horror pictures there as well that you're not going to want to miss. So Tony, any last words?
No, man, this is a great show tonight. I'm looking forward to next week or this weekend.
Yeah, me too. It's going to be a lot of fun.
You old fucker, you.
I am.
I got 4 or 5 days to enjoy it, so I'm going to enjoy it for 4 or 5 days. I'm going to enjoy my youth.
Yes, that's right. That's right. And then on the next week's show, I'll just be giving it right back to you. So, whatever. All right, guys. In the meantime and in between time, that's going to do it for us. In the meantime and in between time, we'll talk to you guys soon. That's going to do it for us. All right. We'll talk to you soon. Cheers.
Later.